Hello everyone, welcome to the second week of Business Analytics Programming. In today's lecture, I'm going to walk you through some of the basic Python coding elements. First, let's look at a simple Python code that we checked last time. In that particular one, you see we defined a variable called the message. And that message is actually basically a string, a collection of characters within a quotation marks, hello Python word. And the first line, basically we define the message. And the second line, we ask the computer to print the content of that message. And we see the result. The hello Python word is the result from the print function. Even with these two simple lines, it covered a lot of the concept of programming, especially programming in Python. So we know that the message is a variable, and the name of that variable is message, and the message do not need to be predefined. So we can use any variable at the time we define it. Basically, we can define that anywhere. We do not need to declare message is a variable before we can use it. And the equal sign is actually an operator to assign a value to a variable. And we can see that that is the content or the value, and this is the variable. The equal sign basically tells the computer, okay, I have a variable called message, and I want its content to be hello Python word. And the content of the variable can be changed at any time later. And also we see there is a collection of characters between the quotation marks. It is actually defined as a string, a collection of characters. In programming world, there are two very basic elements. One is string and the other is numerical values, such as integer, floating numbers, etc. In this particular case, we do not need to define whether the variable can hold string content or numerical content, so it can be changed at any time down the road as well. And function is a universal concept for all programming languages. Basically, function is something that you ask the computer to perform a particular set of operation to the variable, or which is the argument, basically is input to that function to do something. And the print is basically ask the computer to show me what is the content within a particular variable. So we can see that in this notebook fashion, the print is actually an internal function to Python. It is highlighted as the purple color, and there are parentheses, and the argument was inserted between the parentheses. And also we noticed the program is running actually from the top to the bottom. So we see the code is running sequentially of the first line and the second line. So this is the very basic fundamentals of Python code. Looks simple, but it has a lot of concepts like variable, string variable, a function, or how to apply a function to a particular variable. So that's basic summary of all the aspect from this simple two lines of Python code. You may have the question of why do we want to write a program? So it is quite often that we want to simplify the working procedures and let computer to do the tedious repeated manual work as you instructed by the codes. Computer is very good at computation too, such that it can help us do all the analytical work and we can then focus on the insight from the output. And once the program knows who we are through online account, where we are, GPS signals of the mobile devices, and what we want, then it can plan and do virtually anything for us. So those are the few areas that programming can help us a lot. And we know that digital interruptions of all business sectors is happening right now. Like advertisement industry, banking, traveling, communication, retail, etc. All different kind of business sectors actually is it has already experienced with the digital interruption, and knowing how to program and knowing how to use program and data to solve analytical problems is basically needed for any sectors. Okay, let's go back to the simple example of print a text message that we see on last page. It has actually, even though it is simple as a print a message out, it has a lot of application already. For example, we want when we actually at a bank use an ATM, and it can show your account balance. Probably within the code somewhere there is a print function, and your phone show a text message, a pop-up window from your browser showing a warning message, and also the checkout register print your receipt. There could be all different kind of platforms, different devices, and different programming languages. The very basic type of variables are characters or strings, and numeric, like integer and floating numbers, etc. So you may use actually different platform and different programming language, but the print function basically is asking the computer or different devices to show something either in a screen or print out or show in a window, etc. to tell you something. This is just one function called print. And there are actually all kind of different functions available to deal with these two basic type of variables. Now we actually have much more rich variables in addition to text and numeric, like voice, like image, video, etc. All those can be considered as a type of information in the programs that we are trying to write can actually incorporate those information as well. Python is a very open language. Basically, if you want to do something, there are always a function or library available for you to use. And Python is called a glue language. Basically, it is actually help us to glue all different functions and data together to realize some specific output. So that's why Python is so widely used across different business. Okay, so Python is so useful, and let's start with the basics. The basic one is the variable itself. In the previous example, we defined a variable called message and assign a string hello Python word to it in one line. Okay, so the message is the variable name, but as a variable name, there are some rules that we can define that. Like the name, it can only contain letters, numbers, or underscore, and also it must start with a letter or underscore, And space and special characters such as $, percentage are not allowed in variable names. And we have the Python keywords and function names like the print. Try to avoid use those keywords and functions as variable names. It is legal to use those, but you are overriding its original meanings. So try to avoid those names. And it is case sensitive, and for now, let's use lowercase when we name variables. So those are some of the rules for variable name. So variable is basically a container such that it is going to store some information or data. You can change the value of the variable in your program at any time, and Python will always keep track of its current value. So with a few rules of the variable name, here is some example of correct variable name and wrong variable name. So you can see that the variable contains only letters, underscore, and integers 0 to 9. Numbers. So the correct variable name, we see that it can start with a letter, it can start with an underscore, but it cannot start with a number. So this is some of the examples of wrong variables. Like for example, the first one is started with a number. The second one, it has a special character, and the third one, it has a space, and the fourth one, it has a special character. So those are at least violated one of the rules that we define on the left. So there are no limitation on how short or how long in general. So typically when you use it, the name will be fine. So there could be the maximum number of characters, but usually it is large, and we're not going to reach that in most cases. So this is a definition of variables and how we can name a variable. There are some rules we have to follow. If you define your variable with the wrong name, and the Python is going to complain and mention it's not a right variable name, etc., and then you have to correct those. So again, variable is a container such that it's going to store some information or data, and you can always change the value of the variable in your program, and Python will always keep track of its current value. When you print the message, and the message within that variable, it can be actually programmed to contain different kind of information at different stage, and you can print when you call the print what is the current value, it's going to print out the content. As we mentioned, there are two very basic type of variables. String is one very basic Python variable type, and it's a series of characters inside the quotation mark, the double quotation mark or the single quotation mark. So anything within a double quotation mark or a single quotation mark is considered as a string. And it's actually within that quotation mark, you can have letters, you can have numbers, you can have space, special character, etc. No problem, like $, percentage, everything will be fine. But you cannot have double quote within your double quotation marks, or a single quote with your two single quotation marks. That's basically caused a lot of confusion to the program. So if you want to use double quotation mark with your string, and use a single quotation mark as the indication of the string, same for the other case. There are two special characters we usually cannot see it but are very useful for programming. One is the tab. We have the slash t to indicate it's a tab, as well as the slash n as a new line. Um, which those two special characters can be used in within the either the double quotation mark or single quotation mark, and the effect of those special characters will be shown when you, for example, print it out. Um, Once we defined a string variable, we can actually apply certain actions called the method to it by using the dot operator. Um, so when you use, like for example, here we have the message, we assign hello Python word to message. Then message is a variable. It contains a string type of content. Now it's all lowercase, hello Python word. And the dot operator after that variable indicates that we are actually applying a method which is called upper, and then the upper with the parenthesis after the dot tells that we're applying a specific methodology. uh, Basically, that methodology is to convert every characters within message to a capital letter. So the message dot upper will return everything as capital letter. So we print that out and find out, yes, it is indeed everything is capital letter once we apply the upper method to message. But please remember, for this up method, it's just return the capital version of the message, but it does not change the content of message itself. So if we try to print message again, we find out it's still the lowercase. So it is not permanently changing the content of the message for this particular method. It is just convert the lowercase to capital case when we print it out. So for the string variable, the typical methods are title, which is going to capitalize only the first letter for every word. Upper, convert everything into a capital letter. Lower is convert everything into lowercase. Strip is going to remove any of those leading or any spaces at the beginning or the end of the string. There's L version, the left, and R version of strip, the right. So those are some of the basic the methods that we can apply to message. But you do not need to remember all of those because in Notebook, once you type in the value, the variable name and a dot, then press tab in your keyboard, you can see all the methods that are available for that variable. So for example, I enter the message and the dot, then I press tab. I can see there are a lot of different methods that I can apply to the message variable. And some of those we do not need to put any argument within the parentheses, but sometimes they do require to enter some of those argument to help us to understand how different kind of method is going to be executed. So those are some of those method is a very relatively complicated one. We're going to explore those different methods for string variables in the future. So the last property is we can actually combine strings. So suppose we have one string and another string, we want to combine them together, we can simply use the plus sign here to combine strings. So the next topic is another type of Python variable called numeric. There are a few different types within numeric variables. There are integers, that is basically a number without decimal point. And we have floating numbers, that is a number with a decimal point. There are all different kind of operators can be applied to numerical variables, like plus, minus, this times and divided by, and 2 star means the power. So special care when you use the divided by for the two integers, and to ensure we get what we want, sometimes we need to include the decimal point to make it float. So here is actually an example here, like print 5 divided by 3. There are 3 different kind of operations: 5 plus 3, which is 8. 5 divided by 3, because both numbers are integers, so when we do the computation, it returns an integer, which is 1. This may not be what you want, like you actually want the actual number of 5 divided by 3, which is 1.6667. So that is, sometimes you want this, sometimes you want that, depending on your application. If you want a precise result, then remember to use 5 points, which means it's no longer an integer, but it's a floating number. Sometimes in the programming, you want to combine the strings and numerical variables together, but different type of variables cannot work together. And if you try to like use the combined sign plus of what is a string variable and what is a numeric variable, you're going to see error message. But we can convert the integer or float variables into string by the str function. So the str function simply convert any numerical values into a string, and then you can actually combine them together. If when you are actually not sure what is the types of a variable, you can use type function to find out. For example, in this particular case, we define age, a variable, to be equal to 30, which is a numeric. We can print out what is the type of age. It shows int, which is integer. It's one of the numeric variables. And then I want to actually print out a specific message, which has some string here and some string here, but within the middle, it is something from the variable itself. So I use the str function here to convert 30, numerical 30, into 30, the character of 30, and then I then have a variable called message, which actually combined 3 strings together. Remember on last slides we mentioned we can use plus sign to combine strings. Okay, then now we print this message. It shows out to be I am 30 years old. So this is a combination of string and a variable together, but we have to use the str function to convert the age from a numerical value into a string type of variable, and then we can then merge them together. And you may wondering what are those information here. Those are called comments. Any characters in your Python code after the pound sign will be considered as comment. the program is going to ignore anything that is after the pound sign, but the comment is more for us, for the human to read, and it can have a lot of explanations of what this piece of code is doing, and it also helps you in the future, and then you want to understand what you have done in the past. Comment is a very useful feature. And the comment can start at the beginning of the line or in the middle of the line. So whenever we see a pound sign, the program is going to ignore anything after that for that particular line, so code. So that's the very brief introduction of the Python code and the two type of variables that we usually see in Python.